I'm going to call to order the meeting now. The Orleans Fair School Board public hearing on the 2020-2021.
Mr. Ashley.
Present.
Ms.
Present.
Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Interpretation services are available for today's meeting. At this time, I'll yield to our interpreters.
Good afternoon. This is Rebecca Fleming. I'll be your interpreter this evening. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Si hay alguien que quiere escuchar esta audiencia en español, pueden llamar al 978-990-5000. Repito, el número de teléfono es 978-990-5000. El código de acceso es 707717 numeral. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Vic Queen Pham. I'm a Vietnamese interpreter. Xin chào toàn thể quý vị. Tôi tên là Việt. Tôi là thông dịch viên. Tôi trợ giúp thông dịch cho buổi họp này. Nếu quý vị cần trợ giúp, xin gọi điện thoại số 504-975-4967. Xin chân thành cảm ơn quý vị. At this time, I would like to yield back to the board president, Mr. Ashley.
Thank you so much. Let's move to 1.2, Pledge of Allegiance. A recording of the pledge will be led by students from Morris Jeff and Alice Hart Charter School. And if you want, my board members, can you please put your hand over your heart and we will say the pledge together. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That is a beautiful family there. Let's thank you, board members. Let's move to 1.3, adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Koppel, second by Ms. New Houston. Do we have any public comments on this issue?
None.
Do we have any board discussion from the board? Hearing none, I will yield to board counsel for a roll call vote.
Mr. Ashley.
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Ellison.
Yes.
Ms. Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Koppel.
Yes.
Mr. Marshall.
Yes.
Ms. Newell Houston.
Yes.
Does adopted.
Thank you. Let's move to 2.1, purpose of hearing. I'll yield to board counsel.
The purpose of this public hearing is to receive public comment on the proposed 2020 to 2020 general fund budget. Wishing to speak with regard to items on the agenda should fill out a public comment card online at go.boarddocs.com/la/nops/board.nsf/public. The meeting moderator will announce this at their appropriate time. The speaker, again, is to self-identify with the raise your hand feature at the bottom of the web page. And for phone-in participants, dial *6 and the meeting moderator will unmute your audio. Public comments will be received up. Public hearing began at 5:04 p.m. So 5:34 p.m. we will stop taking public comment cards. The board parliamentarian will be responsible for the orderly and efficient conduct of the hearing and shall enforce the established time limit for each presentation. Each person shall be permitted to speak for a limited amount of time, not to exceed 2 minutes as established by the chair. The parliamentarian meeting moderator will recognize the speaker and give him or her permission to proceed. The speaker shall state his or her name and address for the board records. Those who have a group concern are encouraged to select a spokesperson from the group to address the concern. The superintendent or his designee will serve as the official respondent to questions posed by the public. Disruptions or disorderly conduct at this public hearing will constitute grounds for the moderator to disable the offender's audio. With that, I'll yield to the board president.
Thank you. Let's go to 3 presentations. The administration has a presentation on the budget, and I will yield to Ms. Allison.
Let me make sure I am. Okay. Good afternoon, Superintendent and board members and the public. We are very glad to have you joining us for our public hearing on the proposed general fund budget. Just as a reminder, the budget has been available since June 9th on our website for all to see. The budget document has been there, and excuse me, let me get this going. There we go. Okay. And we welcome the public's comments and input into our budget document. So the main themes and highlights for the year is, in a time of many unknowns and a lot of instability, we wanted to provide stability to our employees, to our schools, to our students, and to our families. So the biggest thing is there are no significant changes to this year's budget from the prior year's budget. We are providing that ongoing response to COVID-19 and support for schools. Some of those effects are felt in this budget. And most importantly, we've taken a lot of actions to try to mitigate the negative impacts of COVID-19 on our schools. We do have increased revenues as a result of servicing more children and families through child search from our 2 locations. We used to just have the West Bank location. Now we have the East Bank location at Mahalia Jackson. And of course, we all look forward to the post-COVID-19 times when we can have those meetings again in person. But we will be increasing those services. And there are also some departmental variances. So some major variances, like some departments go to 0 and others look like they double. There's 2 instances of that. And that's really just to consolidate some departments. So looking at our summary general fund budget, we are projecting this year our revenues from local and state sources of $37.3 million. That is, compared to last year's budget, it was $30 million. So it's an increase of about $7 million. And that is really due to 2 things. That due to those increase in services for child search, and also because we are directly operating a school this year, Mary D. Coghill School. And our expenditures by major functions, we expect our total expenditures to be $44.5 million. The same 2 reasons are the same reasons for these major variances that you see in the departments. So before our other uses and sources of funds, we have a deficit of $7.7 million. Our transfers in of indirect costs are $1.6 million. You can see that that's pretty significant over prior years. And the main reason for that is the Federal CARES Act legislation that was passed. And it does allow for a larger increase in indirect costs than other federal programs. And then we also have transfers in from other funds of $5 million. The largest part of that is from our vacant properties fund, which we have folded into the general fund budget. Those costs are in this, are about 2 point something of this $4 million increase is that. And that change. So we are showing a net change in fund balance. We are proposing of just under $445 million. This is the exact amount of the deficit for the Coghill School, to directly run Coghill. Along those lines, we are asking the board to approve a resolution to use system-wide reserves to directly operate Cog Hill School. The main reason for the use of the reserves is the circumstances that are really exceptional and beyond our control with the impact of COVID-19. This presents many challenges for not only the operators of Cog Hill School, but all the schools in New Orleans. They're reduced per pupil funding as a result of significant declines in sales tax revenue, lost instructional time during the spring of 2020, potential loss of instructional time during the current school year, costs associated with instructional modifications and supplies needed to support distance learning, and costs of safety measures at the facility, and other needs associated with the COVID-19 related changes. So just to remind you a little bit about the budget adoption process, the proposed budget has been available for almost 2 months now. And we discussed the proposed general fund budget with our school leaders, with our school finance leaders and board chairs throughout the months of June and July. And at the meeting immediately following this public hearing, the school board will consider a resolution to adopt the 2020-2021 general fund budget. I also would like to take this time to thank Jennifer Celestine. She is on staff here in the finance department, and she basically coordinated the budget, preparing the budget. She does a lot of budget analysis, gives it out to the departments. They provide their input. As you can imagine, it's a very long process, and she started in about December or January, and that was before COVID, before any of us were looking at COVID. And then our problem was, our revenues are going to increase. You know, what are we going to do with those funds? How can we best utilize it? And we had a lot of plans, and Jennifer budgeted for a lot of those plans. And here comes COVID, and we had to, go up with plan B and plan C. So she did a lot of work and had to make a lot of changes. And I just wanted to recognize her for her hard work on this. And I'll be glad to take any questions that somebody may have at this point.
If not, I think we're at 4.1. Is there any public comment? If we have no board comment or any public comment, is there any board comment? If not, that takes us to 6.1, Mr. Ashley.
All right. This is being the final agenda item. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So sorry, there is a public comment. One moment. I apologize. The first speaker is Richard Exynosis. Mr. Richard, if you could engage the raise your hand feature, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Richard Exnicious. I live at 7916 Nelson Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate meeting or forum for these comments, but my email days giving me the impression that they were going to be discussing changing the name of Lusher Charter School at the meeting tonight. It appears that that was not the case. That may be happening at the meeting that follows this one, but I wanted to appear at the meeting to make sure that the impression that it was somehow a unanimous movement behind the name change, and that's completely inaccurate. There's a group out there purporting to be made up of Lusher parents and faculty, et cetera. While it may indeed have some members of the Lusher community in it, it is by no means the voice of all Lusher parents and students. There's been a lot said about who Robert Mills Lusher was, and to be honest, nobody knew who Robert Lusher was until recently when someone did research and found out who the man was. He was rather
Rich, I hate to stop you on this, but this is definitely not on topic, and so I don't want to.
I will yield that then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend.
The next speaker is Lona Hankins. Ms. Hankins, if you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Lona Edwards Hankins. I live at, my address is 3704 Magazine Street. So I have a couple of questions / comments regarding the budget. First is Cog Hill budget, and very concerned about the assumptions on the head count in the past budgets. When you guys have taken over schools, you guys have made assumptions of head counts, and they have turned out to be higher than actuals. So I raise that as you are finalizing this budget. And I saw an increase in the facilities from 86,000 to 244,000, and just really wondering where the rest of your facilities staff is located, if they're in some other budget. And then the vacant properties, 2 comments, because I really wasn't following whether or not you are removing monies from the vacant fund to use to supplant, or to use because you are running a revenue deficit. And I raise that because in the past, you guys adopted, or past boards adopted, that funds from sale of properties would be reinvested into the master plan. And I don't recall a reversal of that in y'all's somebody changing that and reversing that policy. And then I strongly encourage you to start selling off your properties that have buildings on them and put them into revenue so that you can start generating more taxes on that.
That was the last comment card submitted.
Yes. This is John Brown. May I ask a question?
Of course.
Please, Ms.
Yeah.
Brown.
My question is on the misjudgment of estimates of, I think, student counts. Can you give us an example? Do you remember an example of how far we were on the student count that you mentioned? I don't know if it's still available to answer.
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to answer that, Mr. Brown and Ms. Hankins. The student count is based on, the current budget is based on 410 students with that deficit of about $444,000. And we currently have enrolled 402 students. So we are 8 students short. And also, that deficit does not include any funding from the CARES Act, because we were not aware of any of that funding. It also doesn't include any beginning fund balance that the prior operator would have left for use at that school. So it is basically a worst case scenario.
So do you recall the last time that we had this situation that we had to estimate student count and we're far off on our estimation to some large degree? Is that correct?
Diane, let me go ahead and jump in. So as we plan any budget for any school year, of course, we look at our data that we receive from enrollment, and then we do a reduction based on that to even propose our proposed budget for the upcoming school year. And Mr. Brown, still no change as a former administrator. The month of October is when the official student count goes in. We monitor that account, but also during the course of the school year, once we start the school year, even though we're in the midst of COVID-19, we have families who are still opted in to actual school, and then, and they have a period where they can actually transfer out of school. And so those adjustments have to be made. And at the appropriate time, what we will do is, depending on what the adjustments are, make the appropriate adjustments.
Yeah, sounds like that makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you.
There are no other public comments. Is there any other board comment or questions? If not, we are now at 6.1, Mr. Ashley.
Thank you. There's no other further items on the agenda, so may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Coppo. I have a second by Ms. Newell Houston. Yeah. Do we have any public comments on this issue? Hearing none, I
None.
yield. Any board comments? Hearing none, I'll yield to board counsel for a roll call vote.
Mr. Ashley,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Miss Ellison,
Yes.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
Mr. Cobb,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Miss Newell Houston.
Yes.
That motion passes.
I'm sorry. The time now is 5:33 p.m. Meeting adjourned. I'll see you all at our regular business board meeting that's coming up next.